So, welcome to the 1760 sessions, where I sit down with the people building and shaping healthcare businesses on what they have really learned. I'm Harry, as you all know, from 1760, and today I'm joined by the fantastic Kristine Merz, founder and president of Orange Square. Kristine has spent 24 years rebranding B2B health and research organizations through mergers, new leadership, and fast growth. With 12 Rebrand 100 global awards along the way, her argument is that a rebrand is not a visual exercise, it's a transfer of trust. Kristine, thank you for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me, Harry. It's great. I look forward to this conversation we're going to have.
Did I miss anything off the introduction?
No, that sounds good.
Okay, awesome. So, where to start? And I think we want to start in the most obvious place, and that's what led you to start Orange Square back in 2002, I believe it was.
Yep, it was 2002, 24 years ago. I had, just to kind of give people a little bit of background about myself, I went to Rhode Island School of Design as a graphic designer. So it's always like, how do people get into their professions? So I worked in consumer goods for a long time and then went into like B2B as a designer, worked my way up from junior designer to art director to creative director. And then I was working in Boston in the dot-com boom and that went bust. And it was during that time where some things were happening at that company that I wasn't really agreeing with, and some things that were promised weren't necessarily happening. So I thought, I'm going to start my own company because I at that time I felt like we work with both for-profits and nonprofits, and I really didn't like the way agencies handled nonprofits. They didn't treat them as businesses and their businesses. So it was kind of like, oh, we'll do work whether we get paid or it's a low cost, and then we get to just do what we want. It's like, yeah, I don't like that's not very human centered. I'm
No.
like, it's not. I don't think that's the way to do that. So, I thought there was a better way to do that, and so that's when I started Orange Square.
Amazing. So, I love how you've gone from a designer through to thinking that more businesses would be human centered and then pivoting to Orange Square. And it's fantastic that you've been running now the organization for 24 years. Um, what kept you to keep on doing this over the 24 years?
Yeah, I love business. It's funny. I think that um, I'm a very curious person as a designer, and I really, especially in health,
Yeah.
I think we have the real privilege in rebranding companies to work with companies who have just like gone through the gauntlet of I have an idea, it's $1 billion idea. I can get funders, and just the all of the hard work that goes into going from a startup to a successful company to when usually some kind of a significant private equity thing happens, and you need our help. And I think that I love helping companies um, really get clarity on what they do. And I also think that it's a privilege to have, there's not many times that companies slow down and think about what they're doing. And I think that everything is so siloed and not just in like products and services and how companies work, but just the natural structure of a company.
Yeah.
Everyone has a role, they're doing their thing. And I think that when you are rebranding companies, you're really thinking about it differently. And I've been writing and thinking that we've always been saying that we're a brand strategy firm, and I think it's the completely wrong term. And so I've been thinking about what do we do? And I think, but I think that I'm very curious, and we really love helping companies that are changing people's lives, um, and all the intended positive things that health companies are trying to do,
Yeah.
help them realize that.
So, when you're working with someone, at the very start of that relationship, so that by the time a company gets to your doorstep, what does that usually look like for them? And then what's the journey you take them on?
It usually looks like, so the most common things are merger acquisitions. So this is what it looks like. It looks like we have to do something about brand
Yeah.
because of this big change that happens. So some massive significant change, which is so big that there's a realization that there's something about whatever brand is that they need experts on and they would need to be rebranded. And so I think, and sometimes that initial, they can also come to us in different ways. They could come to us with like through our diagnostic tools, or they could come to us like it's a lot of referrals. And so like we were, go to Orange Square, they helped us with this. And so sometimes it could start simple, like mission, vision, values. Like there's some like we're really changed, so we have to go back and look at that. But mostly whether we're hired kind of through diagnostic tools to create understanding amongst leadership, or they know they need to rebrand and they've come to us because of either like a merger acquisition or a new CEO. And then we start with understanding. And I think that, um, after because I'm a human centered designer, and I was always taught you can't, you know, you can't find a solution until you understand what the problem is. I realized in my RISD education, I've kind of taken that to heart. And I thought that people would be human centered in business and that people would be more of a problem finding mindset. And I find that's not true at all. Everyone's just focused on problem solving. But when they solve the wrong problem, they get the wrong answer. So we come in and take them through a series of brand strategy exercises where we're really trying to understand, the entire company structure, what people are trying to achieve, where they are in the market. So there's a lot of um, conversations and visualizations and figuring out to get the clarity.
Yeah, okay. So I love the fact that there's full diagnosis involved, and
Yeah,
the quote that you said there that you don't understand the problem I don't understand the solution until you know if there's an actual problem. And I think there's too often, and this isn't just relevant to branding. This is relevant to all businesses where you're almost trying to tell someone that there's a fire that they need putting out, but they actually can't see the fire. More
yeah,
often than not. So it's that diagnosis that's incredibly important. And you chose to essentially pivot really into healthcare.
mm,
Uh, and healthcare, as like ourselves, working in healthcare, it's a huge sector, and it's always the MO. I kind of like, help people that are helping other people when you work
yeah.
in the healthcare sector. So when did you feel that healthcare stopped being a set of clients and start being the position?
It was really um, when we were kind of rebranding ourselves and thinking about ourselves, and I was, writing down like clients and stuff. And then once I wrote down like like we have worked with every part of the health industry aside from maybe two, maybe just government and
Mm.
um but really everything. And we made a diagram on our website. Um because once I once I looked at that, once we kind of had the list and made it to a visual, I was like, wow, that it just has happened over time. And then it was really kind of that self-reflection that was like, we really have worked in all aspects of this and understand the system because I'm a systems designer, right? So, and health is a massively complicated system that is broken for the large part. And so, which creates a lot of work for us. But I think that, that's the realization where it was like, okay, this should be our sole vertical positioning.
Okay. And like you've already done some fantastic work in the space, obviously having been around since 2002. I think on our last call you mentioned you beat Ogilvy for the third largest CRO in the world.
Yeah, that was a fun rebrand.
I mean, you say you're small, but
Mhm.
you are fighting above your weight
Yes.
in that
Yes.
section.
Yeah.
Particularly a name like that. What
Yeah.
actually kind of decides it? Why do they go ahead with yourself instead of Ogilvy, for example?
I think in this case, it was interesting. We had been working with the client for around 7 or 8 years, and we had worked with every single, um, part of the company, and from my kind of as a consultant point of view, I'm always looking at, basically where are the buckets of money? What is the structure? How can we be helpful? And because I really, if you're trying to help parts of the company, it's really helpful to understand the other parts to look at the whole system. And so over time, we had worked with every aspect, it's a global company, 80 countries, 50 offices. So, um, you know, there is a lot of, it's big. And so because we had that experience and we understood
Yeah.
them and they were a publicly traded company, the CEO who was the founder, amazing, was selling the company, retiring. So it went into private equity. And then when the private equity firm got them, they obviously put a new CEO in charge. And they really wanted to move quickly with some of the things they wanted to do around the rebrand. And we had all the knowledge. So there wasn't going to be any upstream. And so, and really, um, I don't want to talk bad about Ogilvy, but we picked up a lot of their bad work from the first round. And so we fixed a lot of things they tend to do in the identity part, the beautiful things, but not the functioning things. And so we had done all those things as well. So I think they understood that we got the whole, we could do the whole project. We understood all the things. and they had come to us for most of that anyway.
Amazing. So it's not only was it experience, it's the fact that there was a few holes that you had
Yeah.
to fill in from previous work.
Yeah.
And I think we spoke about you teaching creative firms to niche.
Yeah.
The absence of options is almost too scary for them. Why is focus so hard to sell?
Yeah. It's interesting. I think that in creative services companies, people think that when you focus on something, you're giving up the ability because, we can and have rebrand every industry. We've worked in all industries, not all industries, but many, many industries, B2B, and the B2B side, not the B2C side. Um, and I think that when you ask creative services firms to position and focus, I think that they just see that as giving up opportunity. They think selling to more sectors or the more they can do is where the excitement lies for them, and they expect that to be reflected back in a marketplace. And so what I teach them is that it's the opposite.
It 100% is the opposite.
Yeah.
It's all your marketing is going to be to do with your niche, all of your previous work, your best clients, anything you're sharing externally and how people look at you will be to do with your niche. I think
Yep.
people just have that fear of, am I capping myself by niching down?
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned with, creative firms, you called it an episodic niche,
Yes.
narrow and only needed for 4 years.
Hmm.
How do you actually build a business on that?
Yeah. It's challenging, I have to tell you.
Yeah.
Um, I think that it's the challenge lies within the fact of kind of knowing that and realizing that. I froze. I think I'm coming back. Um, does it matter?
You find my end.
Okay, good. Um, it doesn't. Sorry, what was your question?
I mentioned, you called it an episodic niche,
Oh,
narrow
yes.
and yeah.
Because what I realized, and kind of thinking about our own rebrand is that was the truth of it, and all of our work had come from referrals, and I was thinking about like marketing and new clients and those kinds of things. And when you realize that your expertise falls within, first of all, I think there's a problem with the word brand. You mentioned a little in the intro, because I almost think for what we do, it's like too small of a word for it because everyone just thinks it's marketing, communication, logos, colors, fonts, and it's like it's not what it is. It's not what we do anyway. And I think that this episodic thing that people don't have expertise in, um, is it's tricky because it's referrals for us, but then I'm trying to work with private equity firms. So here's the ask for anyone who's listening. I need more private equity connections, and I would like to go to some of their trade shows, and they're invite only. So public ask any private equity people that want to bring me to one of their shows. I want to go. But I think that it is that realization and then understanding and then the work I've been doing. Like I made 40 videos that are about rebranding because once I kind of understood I had expertise, I wanted to share that expertise.
Yeah.
So on our website, you can go see those videos because I wanted to just give people a way to understand what we know for free and to, answer some of the questions they might have and also start to build trust with our company.
How did that go?
It,
Offering it together.
it's good. I mean, it was a really interesting project to think about 40 videos and what they would be. And, I mean, didn't have a number in mind. It was like, it turned out to be the number once we figured out all what we wanted to say. Um, and it was a lot of shooting and it was a good effort. It's funny. I think that I wouldn't put a client through what I put myself through because it was way too condensed in terms of filming. But again, budget, what are you going to do? You want to do it right. And so, but I think it really helped me, that whole process just made me realize a lot, which is that I have just finished. So I've been writing to private equity firms about value and the enterprise value and in the things that we do, and a whole bunch of AI stuff that we've been doing research on. But I think that in that work, I realized that we have been calling ourselves the wrong thing. And
Yeah.
that's been like, I'm writing a 4-part series on that. I don't know, maybe it's a manifesto. I'm not sure. But I really think it's about thinking about value creation in a different way for companies.
So I want to read all about it because I think there's so many different ways in which companies perceive value, and it's like, what is the best way into getting into an organization those days and then seeing your value. Um, and value can be across marketing, across brand. It's everything. And I think this kind of leads in perfectly into your revelation. Stop trying to convince people that brand is not what they think it is,
Yep.
and just change the word.
Yep.
Think what we kind of set, what you settled on was kind of organizational intelligence.
I think now that was one of the versions of it.
Okay.
I think now it's organizational coherence.
Okay.
Um,
Why the switch up of words?
because I think it's kind of three-part things. Well, I think that organizations have, when you're thinking about, brand strategy and identity work, that's important. Really, what I think is that every organization has an operating system, and I'm not talking software, right? So, like assumptions, beliefs, experiences, standards, relationships, trust, shared knowledge. It's the kind of invisible parts of a business that people rely on every day, right? Most organizations really don't document this. And they may not even realize that it exists, but it's always there. It's shaping how opportunities are evaluated, how risk is interpreted, and how decisions are made. It's really why, like, two companies that have similar products and similar people and similar markets can make completely different decisions about an opportunity, right? So I think that one organization can move quickly
Yeah.
because everyone shares that shared understanding and what's going on, and the other hesitates because leaders are operating under different perspectives of the business. And so that's why I think that's more about organizational coherence in the work that we do.
Okay, it does make sense. And I've been thinking about this before I joined the call. What do you think that word brand, what does the word brand cost you in a room with a CEO,
Ugh,
private equity partner?
it's the worst because they just think of it I mean, like, no offense to all the marketing communications in the world, but people in the world, but I think that um, it's just thought of as an executional piece. Like, it's not thought of as business strategy. For as much as I really love that IDEO made design thinking a business thing, like, I'm so thankful for them for doing that. It's still not convinced executives and, both senior level executives, private equity boardrooms, that when they think of brand and however they define it, they're just thinking about kind of marketing, communications, logos, font. They're just thinking about the pretty things or the messaging things, or the executional items that they need, like a website. And they're not understanding that they don't know where the trust lives. They understand, what the business is on paper, but they think the word brand in that activity, um, is just it's just something that is not as valuable to their business as what we think it is, I guess.
Okay. And I love the words transfer of trust. It sounds
Mm,
so deeper, and it doesn't sound like you're being pigeonholed like you would do with branding. I was just curious, when you're going through like a process with a prospective client, do
mm.
you leave the word off the word brand?
Well, no, and I think this is the kind of the latest realization is that, we say we're a brand strategy firm, and if you go to our website, that's what it says. But I think that, um, I think we can't walk away from it completely, but I think that because the expression, so the brand strategy and the identity work
Yeah.
is an end product, right? Um, I think that we won't be able to walk away from it completely, but I think we just need to describe what we do without that as the lead thought.
Yeah.
Because when it's the lead thought, it's just like we used to be Orange Square Design. I took the design off because oof, that doesn't help anyone. And then, because we really are, a a high-end consultancy that understands something's very, very specific, and have proven expertise in it. I think that really realizing that, you can't redefine a word for somebody, but it was like that's kind of what I've been trying to do. And so I feel like that's not my efforts not placed in the right way, which then led me to thinking like we've just been calling what we do the wrong thing. So that's kind of been the revelation lately.
Okay. And you said to me, leaders can be taught the principle, but they still will have to find where the trust actually sits.
Yeah.
Why could that never be shortcut then?
Yeah. I think well, you can shortcut it. So here's the thing. It's funny because we're working for one of our clients that we've had for a really long time, and they did a rebrand. They did like this. It's a big, huge Fortune 25 company, so they did like this cascading down
Okay.
rebrand, and um, And so they did it as a visual exercise, right? And they it wasn't just visual. I mean, they did do all the positioning statements and all that stuff, but they didn't bother to figure out what everyone really did and why. They just like this change, and then they kind of pushed it down onto everybody. So the thing about trust transfer is when you don't do the work to understand what it really is, what you can't just announce, we've rebranded and it's a change. So you can announce a rebrand can represent change. Great. Because then people will have to remember, oh, it was formerly this, now it's this, like if you change the name. Um, but there's so much disruption. People hate change. But I think that if you don't do the work to understand where the trust lies in the company, both with internal employees and with your customers, then I don't think that there's no there in the pretty making, which is also why the word brand and that whole thing that as a rebrand is a disservice. It doesn't help my kind of plea for what it really is. And then we end up doing all that work anyway. It ends up being more expensive
Yeah.
because people aren't aligned. They don't have any organizational coherence at all. You know, like the pretty making part doesn't make you have organizational coherence. It should be the organizational coherence that leads to the pretty making part.
Okay.
And that's where I think people get it wrong.
There's another thought that's always crossed my mind is why not go for the word loyalty rather than trust?
Mm. That's interesting. That's a good thought. I mean, I think that loyalty definitely is a part of it because this is, B2B world, right? So these are
Yeah.
long standing. I think it's the other reason I like about working in the B2B world versus B2C is that, a business has to go to another business for something they can't do themselves. And whatever they're hiring that person to do is going to make them more money, right? That's the goal. And so I think that um, it's such a different kind of a sale, right? And so I think that there is loyalty is built into that, but
Yeah.
I think that it's also because things are always changing. Then you have to trust that they can also keep ahead of things, and you have to trust that they're going to be there for you know, they're going to be the partner you need to keep going with the thing that company helps you with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Um,
It doesn't mean it's not loyalty, though. That's definitely a part of it. I like that word as well.
and I think that, but then there's the argument as well that loyalty can also get pigeonholed somewhere else as well.
Yeah.
So trust is a much broader term, I think. In
Yeah.
that field. I wanted to pivot to talk about AI
Mm,
because we did talk about this last time, and you
yeah.
said that you're building writing standards straight into clients' is
Mm,
systems. What
yeah.
does that look like for you?
Yeah. I think it's interesting because, again, as a human centered firm, it's human plus AI for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's been, it's been fascinating. This is, I mean, having gone through the .com boom, here, this is, a bigger change. We're redefining what it means to be human in this,
Yeah.
which I'm very interested about. Obviously, I'm as a human centered designer. Um, but I think that part of, I mean, there are so many negative downsides to AI. It's just, too many to name. But then it's like, for people that are using it, which they're going to, like, how do we use it effectively? And so I think when we're looking at what we can do, if, kind of executionally on the identity side, the kind of realization about when you do all the standards around colors and fonts and images, that's pretty much used by professional designers, aside from, PowerPoint would be the exception. But so that stuff, once you've done it, pretty much the people that are using that are professional people, whether within a company or out. But then the writing standards, though, are different because everyone writes at a company, maybe from something as simple as an email to all the marketing communication that they do as a company. And I think that, when you're doing like brand voice and tone, and I think people, when you write standards and you get into editorial philosophy, writing principles, grammar, punctuation, capitalization, acronyms, numbers, naming conventions, stakeholder language, how do you talk to audiences, overused buzzwords. I mean, like there's so much in the writing part of it.
Yeah.
And when we would write writing standards for companies, and you can, kind of have like examples like, not this, and not this, so kind of like on a spectrum, like how do you write and writing those standards, for people to understand and other writers to write. The opportunity with AI is you can build it in as a core skill into the AI system. And you can also get into like even more, because there's the people in the company, right, who are the ones that review the really important documents,
Yeah.
aside from not the lawyers. I mean, although lawyers are very good at editing. So putting aside the legal part of this for a second, but let's just talk about the marketing communications experts who hold all this knowledge in their heads, all the details. It's like the go-to people when it's a really important thing. They're the ones that proof it and go through it, right? But I think that that kind of leaves that consistency and brand alignment. That's really it's as important in a visual aspect of a brand as it is in the words, right? Because if you're looking, consistency is more than visual.
Yeah.
You're looking to grow revenue or grow stakeholder value or investor value and all of those things. Then the writing part is huge part of it. And also, as people use AI systems, you really want that built into the core of your AI system so everyone in the company is using it, because I think it's one of those things where the standards get kind of isolated in the wrong way. And so AI is this great opportunity in this regard, because people are still writing, they're still having thoughts, they're still the experts, right? It's just all of the things that are going to help the consistency of the brand and show an aligned force to the public that really makes a difference over time. It allows us to make that at a systems level in a way that we never could before. So it's really exciting.
And you said it kind of takes it now out of the marketing department.
Well, it does. I mean, it takes it. I mean, obviously, it depends. The more people that are using it, but I think that as people are writing something important or making a PowerPoint or even writing emails that are important, however they're gonna use AI, however they're gonna go into the system, improve this or whatever. It's like if that is lacking all of even our larger clients, I haven't seen anyone really building efficient systems like this. And so, you know, but making this as a core skill allows everyone in the entire company to benefit from these standards and
Yeah.
have it running in the background not without them knowing it, because they need to know that it's happening. And the other part of it is it doesn't change the process that we go through to approve all this stuff and the parts that go into the system and building it. And we can also get deeper into those details. Um, that is something that is the same process. It's there's everyone approves that it goes into the system. So I think that, and also the kind of gathering from other people, like all their experts in the company, you know, all these terms or abbreviations or whatever, like you can go suss those things out more. You can even do more details than you ever could. And if you wrote standards like this, no human would read all of them. So you can kind of gather from the company all these best parts and put them into the system so that it has a centralized knowledge base that is used. So
Wow.
it's huge.
And I think you said last time as well that PowerPoint is next on your list. Uh,
Yes. Yeah. Well, then it's kind of interesting because when the core skill, then you can make edit. So let's just use OpenAI. Let's use GPTs just to get terminology. So you can make a GPT for editing. You can make one for web writing. PowerPoint's definitely on the list, because then you can put best practices of, let's just take web writing. So for this client that we just rebranded, they're writing the website, so we made a GPT for that. So then you can put all of the best web writing standards in on top of the core skill that is all the voice, tone, grammar, all that stuff. Um, and that's where you can start to really kind of transform writing into having those best practices and have it be specific. So then even in the editing things, you can edit for just review or light editing or terminology or you know in a rebrand, all the stuff that's from before, like converting all that, huge. um Flame sensitive reviews, like there's all kinds of things that you can put in these systems that really will help the company create better, more consistent on brand communication. And also people learn while they're using it, how how those rules are being used. You see that, so that also means you become a better writer by using it. Better, not better in terms of you have not a better writer, you have more understanding. Well, in the case of the web thing, you might become a better web writer.
there's the other side of things where AI makes everything look more polished, but then there's
Yeah.
this alignment happening at the same time.
Yeah, I think the problem is that here's what I think is going to happen with AI is I think everyone's going to start to sound the same. Because if you're like we are building, in a rebrand, right? We are understanding as much of the voice and tone and style and all that stuff at the level of detail I'm talking about as we are colors, fonts, images, icons, all that, right? And I think that is what you have to put into the system. And I think that without doing that, because AI it's scraped everything, it's learned. It's
Yeah.
like so it has all this knowledge, but then it just sounds the same. And I think that companies are going to have to figure out what their authority really truly in. And that's part of what we've been thinking about is what is the thing we're starting to do in rebrands that we never have done before. And part of that is creating authority lanes for them that comes out of all the other work we do in discovery. But like these are the important things. But I think that, and I also think that the use of it will make the sameness, make companies sound very similar fast. Um, the overuse of it, or the just incorrect, not overuse, incorrect use of it. If you're not setting up these systems properly, and you think, oh, it's magical, it can write it, it makes everything sound good. It's like you're just missing the point.
So where is your line between what gets built into a system and what has to stay human then?
Well, first of all, everything we're building is human plus AI, human first, right? Because people are still writing, people are still experts, it just allows more people to participate in communication. So, for example, if you were working on a website and you wanted some of the experts in your company to help pages that would make sense for them to work on, the tools will help them do that in a better way. But I think that it is not, it is kind of a core skill instead of, it's not at all taking away what humans have to do because that's, I don't know, that's magical thinking. And I think that it's not, well, I mean, look, companies have figured out that a lot of what they want isn't going to happen.
Okay. Well, look, this has been a very, very fruitful conversation. I think we could probably keep going, but I just
Yeah.
wanted to wrap up. And I wanted to just touch upon one last question, and that is just what is the future of Orange Square, and what is the future of Orange Square alongside AI?
Oh, I mean, I want the future to be that we're doing that for people understand what we do and that they and I hope that people will continue to pause. I mean, they do have to in a rebrand. But I hope the value of that is seen more. But I think the future of Orange Square is really helping companies understand what their organizational coherence is
Okay.
and how that connects to all aspects of their business and how it allows them to make better decisions and respond better to what a marketplace is going to change at rates that we've never seen. It's a non-human pace.
Yeah.
And I don't think the objective should be like keeping up with the non-human pace because people are just going to lose their minds and there's already people burning out on the coding side, right? But I think that you have to figure out what the coherence in your company is in order to go forward accurately. And I hope that we can build AI tools that are human first always, and meaning that, and I don't just mean that in a trite way, meaning the power of human plus AI is realized.
Amazing. What a powerful answer to end on. Kristine, thank you so much for joining me today. Apologies for our technical issues joining, but I'll be sharing this out on my channels later this week. Well, probably next week, early next week now, and I'll include a link to Orange Square below. But thank you so much for joining me today.
All right. Thanks, Harry. Thanks for the conversation. I appreciate it.
Bye.